And so being smart is not the goal for AI or of human beings in and of itself. Of course, intelligence is important, but the purpose is to help this technology have the tools and the know-how that it needs to help us be more human and not more industrial and not more technological, if that makes sense. We need to have enough within us to learn and look and learn from the people that are different from us. You know, you have two generations, right? Younger adults and older adults meeting together, a lot of different backgrounds. And what I want is, and what we need in healthcare, but in the world, of course, is people able to appreciate others that are different from them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of industry's biggest podcast, the Healthtech Innovation 2024-25. I'm your host, Arvind Sarin, the CEO and chairman of Copper Digital, your guide through the ever-evolving landscape of health tech innovation. Today, we have a remarkable guest joining us, a TEDx speaker, assistant professor, and director of geriatric education at the University of North Dakota. His research delves into the intricacies of the social determinants of health, exploring self-efficacy, connectedness, and resilience among older adults. Our guest has pioneered a curriculum focusing on intergenerational programs, incorporating growth mindset, reminiscence therapy, mindfulness, guided imagery, and smart goal setting practices to empower individuals all over the globe. Joining us today is esteemed Jeremy Holloway, PhD. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Arvind. Thank you so much for that delightful and wonderful and honorable intro.
Well, thank you for your time and thank you for what you do and all of your contributions to the community. I am just so fascinated with the kind of work that you do, and especially, right now with all the talks. But first things first, I want to understand what sparked your interest in healthcare and how did that journey lead you to focus on social determinants of health for older adults?
Absolutely. It started in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. I was finishing my dissertation. I was helping underserved students. And then I heard about older adults who were dying from social isolation and loneliness. They were in nursing homes, assisted living communities, etc. And they were isolated in their rooms. They weren't able to leave. And, that was for their physical safety, but their social safety was at risk. And they started to give up hope, and many were dying. So I created an intergenerational program called To Legacy. I created that to connect older adults who may feel socially isolated and alone with university students that may feel like they want to make a contribution, but they also need it actually for their schooling because they're healthcare students. So I thought it would make sense for those two to meet and have some connection.
That is so amazing. Tell me a little bit more about Telegacy and how you came up with the idea and how does it work, just for our audience as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I started it, I wanted to use something to help the older adults. I really wanted to do something to help create connection because it was really the students everybody needed connection during that time, the beginning of the pandemic. So I took what I did from a dissertation and gave some life enrichment directors some exercises, and it was helpful, but at the same time, it was hard for life enrichment directors to do the exercises or facilitate them themselves. So what I did was, I just thought to myself, I wonder who could be really good for working with older adults. Said, oh my gosh, students, they're already learning these things. They have to be engaged. And I didn't even know the things I know now about how much students in healthcare fields need to have these interactions with older adults before they get out there in the field. We did some research and found that students, unless they're in pediatrics, when they graduate, 80% of their clientele, we're talking healthcare students, allied health, physicians, etc., they're going to be working with, 80% of them are going to be older adults that they work with because we have a baby boomer population that has that is growing the population of older adults. And so that need is crucial. And so what the program does is it matches the university student in healthcare field with an older adult who may feel socially isolated and alone. They meet once a week over the phone or virtually, and recently we've opened it up to in person, and they meet once a week. And then at the end of the sessions, we give to the older adult a book we call a legacy book that summarizes the stories that the older adults share with the students, because we want to reinforce that their story matters. The older adult
Wow.
matters. Their story is one to be told.
So, is this the story that the students are trying to listen to and they're taking notes, and then you convert that into a story and present it to the older adults?
Yeah, we train the students so that they don't have to try too hard. They can get some training, and so we have a whole curriculum. And so the curriculum helps the students get a little comfortable with what it means to engage in these conversations. I don't call them interviews, call them conversations and sessions, because we don't want the students just to sit there and ask questions. We want two people, I say it this way, hospitality and hospital. We got the word hospital from hospitality. Hospitality is the action of and the process of two strangers becoming friends. And so we want that practice to start before they get out there in the field, because that is the practice we need when we're out there in the field. And the best time to learn it is during the education process. So the students, they take notes, and they also, with the permission, of course, of the older adult, they record the conversation. And so they take those recordings and make further notes, send it to our team, and then we help to make the legacy book.
Amazing. Wow. It's called the Legacy Book.
Yes.
Great, great. So these are once a week sessions that your students at, you know, the university are taking. I mean, that's at least how it started. And then are these Zoom meetings, of course?
Zoom meetings, also in person and over the phone as well. So it's really the preference of the older adult. If the older adult wants to meet over the phone, then that's what's going to happen. If they want to meet in person, we're going to do everything we can to have that happen. And also, if they want to meet virtually, if they love to meet virtually, or they want to try it out, because maybe it's something that during the pandemic in the beginning, we found that it was a lot of times the first time for a lot of older adults in their 90s, and some older adults in their 90s have done it 100 times. So it was just something that we were prepared to just help if that was needed, to bring that virtual component in there.
Got it. Got it. Well, great. That's wonderful. So, I guess diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to your advocacy. Can you share a case where technology has contributed to reducing health disparities? And I guess what challenges still need attention in this specific area?
Yes, there's a lot, but training is central. Training is central when it comes to this. And there are a lot of things to explore and talk about. AI is really big these days. And there's a lot that companies are exploring. What I want to advocate for in some projects I'm developing is related to helping to bring in the positive reinforcement of self-efficacy of all peoples, because that's what we need. We need to realize there's a lot of strength within, and that's where resiliency comes from. Resiliency is something that a lot of healthcare systems are looking into for their staff. There's a lot of burnout. And the reason why all these things are really important is because we have to train the staff, because they're the ones interacting with the patients, with the older adults who are at their most vulnerable place. And so what technology needs to do is help bring in a lot of tools that help build self-efficacy within the staff and the older adult, because we're humans serving humans. and our tech should be serving humans. A lot of times, I think sometimes we're trying to serve tech, and we need to be helping tech to serve human beings and helping them to have human beings be the best human being that they can possibly be.
I love that. And I love that concept because you know what? I feel like self efficacy is everything. I mean, what do you need? You need that positive reinforcement. You need somebody who really believes in you, says, no, it's going to be okay. You got to just continue on. You're on the right track. You're doing all these things right. I mean, instead of course, all of us maybe sometimes in those moments have been guilty of, you know, gaslighting. So, the point is like, all of us, we just need that encouragement. And, I talk about this in one of my videos. There's a video I created that talks about how to get ahead of 99% of the people. And I think one of those fundamentals, besides, awareness, so, getting to that mindfulness and understanding and sort of visualizing where you want to be and what does that future look like? And what does that future look like if you don't do these things, and then just really focusing on that. But in the end, it was surrounding yourself with people who are extremely supportive. Like, you got to just, be out there for them. And, but in that case, I guess my question is, how do you give feedback to somebody who's on the wrong track, right? I mean, because you want to be mindful about the self-efficacy, but if someone's on a little bit of a destructive path, then how do you tackle that, or how do you coach the young adults to tackle that?
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I'll talk in general in a way that applies to people of all different ages because that's what I'm advocating for. Really, the social connection of people from college age to the workforce, and then also older adults. And I know college age can also be a plethora of ages, so that's why I share the way I do. One of the things you had mentioned gaslighting, and so one of the reasons why there's more gaslighting happening is of because it's easier to do that than to engage in conversation with someone that has a different perspective than you, that are sharing things that are different, that you think you might not agree with, but you don't really know enough to disagree, but you don't have enough I'll call it social or conversational resiliency to push through to get to the deeper understanding of each other. I think there's a type of engagement and conversation where we're expecting like a microwave type of conversation as opposed to crock pot, stove oven style, where there's a process here where we can get deep and learn about each other and appreciate each other even though we're different. That all has to do with the curriculum that we provided for the university students. There's 4 components. One is mindfulness. The other one is visualization, goal setting. Another one is growth mindset. And the other is reminiscence therapy. So it's all about appreciation. So the mindfulness, helping folks to understand, appreciate their present and be present in the conversation with this person. The second, growth mindset, that one helps one to appreciate their past. What are the things I've been through to help me to grow and become the person that I am today? So we can look back and appreciate those things that help us become better, the people that we are now, people that we are today, which is great. And then we also have visualization and goal setting. That's appreciating the future, appreciating what's up ahead, right? And having that kind of lens and perspective, especially as a student or healthcare worker, and having these conversations always from the lens of that appreciation and awe of the moment, but the potential of the future and what we learned from the past. And so that transcends to the person that we're interacting with always. So that's something that the healthcare worker can bestow to whoever they're working with, but the patient or the resident, the older adult, or their family when they get home, because what what we can't really separate that life that we're having. If we're having difficulty outside of work, that's going to show up at work, right? And so to utilize and practice things that I call principles or skills that are transferable and help wherever you are, it can only help when you're at work too.
Wow, got it. Okay. Well, what was the fourth one? The four-step process. What's
Yeah, so reminiscence therapy is simply the skill of really helping one to reminisce and appreciate that moment in which they're reminiscing and thinking about their life and reflecting on their life.
love it?
Reflection is such a powerful thing. I mean,
Yeah,
whenever I go to speak, I'm always sharing about things I learned from reflection, from
totally.
life that I gained, and to give people an opportunity to do that is the biggest gift ever.
Wonderful. Okay, good. Well, great. I love that framework. So, I mean, it begins with mindfulness, I guess, which is extremely important because otherwise, how would you even know what's going on? I mean, you're just going to be bombarded with all the external things that are coming at you. And then, like you're never going to be able to unpack things and really truly understand all of the sensations and how you feel, what your body needs, what your mind needs. So I love it. I think that mindfulness is step one. And then I think you mentioned about the visualization as another step, which is extremely important because that's super motivating, right? And then you mentioned the reminiscence. And then I'm sorry if I'm missing the fourth one. What's that fourth one?
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset. So what do you mean by that? Like just generally always being ambitious and wanting to grow and get better, or what do you mean growth mindset?
Yeah, so there's Carol Dweck coined the phrase growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and it's all
I've read that
about
book.
feel. Oh, okay, you read the book, yeah. So, and I think that in education, it's and in business, it's something that's really been circulated, and that's good. Needs to be circulated more in healthcare. So, well, with what I'm using this tool for in healthcare is helping one to appreciate how they've grown from their past. How the things that they've experienced have a lot of value because they're things that you can look back and learn from and
Right.
therefore grow. Fixed mindset is a mindset in which people feel like, they're just static and they're just who they are, so they have to pretend that they have certain skills if they don't have them. And that can get them in a pickle because insecurity comes out of that. And whenever you function out of insecurity, it's you have to defend yourself most of the time. And when you're always in defensive mode, you're never really calm, relaxed, and able to be yourself because you're pretending to be something everyone else you hope everyone else sees you as, and it's not no way to live.
Absolutely. And it's taxing as well.
Yeah,
And I think it applies in like so many different situations. And it's fantastic because a lot of times I would be in meetings and I would just ask questions that I really genuinely want to know.
yeah.
I mean, it may not be anything to do with the meeting, but sometimes I get the looks and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, fine, let's get back to the topic. Well, speaking of which, really wanted to for us to do a little bit of a deeper dive into for the community was mental health. So, as you
Mm.
know, mental health is a significant aspect of overall well-being for everybody. Of course, I mean that's a fact, and I've got very strong views on democratizing, you know, therapy and availability of mental health resources and all that good stuff. But for I guess, can you tell me how can health tech contribute to addressing the mental health needs of older adults specifically? And are there specific innovations that you are finding promising within this domain?
Yeah, the one that I'm going to mention is it's called the age-friendly approach. So anyone can Google age-friendly, and there's a certification program for healthcare and hospitals, healthcare systems and hospitals. So there's 4 M's of the age-friendly approach. One of the M's is related, but the other ones, they all interact with each other. So the one that you'll find that relates directly to this subject is mentation, and that has to do with the cognitive health of an individual. Another one is medication. Another one is mobility. And then the fourth one that I'm going to talk about is what matters. What matters to that older adult. And so what matters to the older adult is what mattered to them before. There's a lot of things that matter to us, but our society, pressures of society, I should say, and this is a DEI related topic too, but pressures of society cause us to think, doesn't cause us to think, but influences us so that we think that what matters to us doesn't matter to society, so therefore we shouldn't pursue it or we shouldn't explore this, and that's actually harmful to our health.
Wow,
So
okay.
what matters to us is what matters to us, and if it matters to us, then it matters. And so that's something to get deep down inside every single individual, because we talk to older adults. One of my geriatrician, he asked one of his patients, like, what matters to you? And this person was like in their upper 80s, and this person said, no one's ever asked me that before. I thought that was astonishing, because this person's almost 90. No one's ever asked him, what matters to you? See, the more, even Jeff Bezos said, and I love looking at reels just like anyone else on social media, right? Jeff Bezos, I was going and I saw this reel. Jeff Bezos said, stress is an interesting thing, because you could be doing nothing and be really stressed out, but you could be really engaged in activity and completely at ease and feeling vibrant because you're doing what matters to you. And you're feeling stressed out because you're feeling like there's things that you should be doing, but you have these other things that you feel like you have to do, and it's stressing you out. So geriatrics and care of older adults, it's really, to me, it starts in youth. Like it starts educating youth in regard to, like, begin with the end in mind. It's a nice Steve Covey book. I recommend it. Highly effective people.
Yeah, me
But,
too.
you know,
Yeah,
begin with the end in mind. So we should be helping young people to explore what matters to you and how can you make steps in engaging, because that is going to be the determinant of your healthy aging. And we all want to age very, very well. That's the goal.
got it, got it. So keep the end in mind, and then sort of backtrack. What are some of the steps? And that's obviously, I mean, it makes sense. It's logical, and I've heard this a lot of times in different, areas. And I do agree with you on, that Bezos reel as well. That it just really depends. Like, your mind is all you have, and you could be just sitting there with nothing, but then still be extremely stressed. But at the same time, you could be like really, like you said, engaged and be contributing, and coming up with some really important big items and discoveries or whatever it may be, but still be at ease. And I think that has something to do with, like, aligning your thoughts and your actions. I think in some ways, I remember there's a quote from one of my favorite people in the entire world, Mahatma Gandhi. He talks
Mm.
about true happiness comes when your thoughts and what you say and how you act aligns. So
Oh my
beautiful,
gosh.
so powerful.
Oh
Like,
my gosh. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Dr. Martin Luther King, one of my, social advocate heroes, he said that, apart from Jesus, but like even though he's a Christian, he was deeply influenced by Gandhi, deeply
oh,
influenced because of his nonviolent approach. Now, that tells me a lot of things. Even though this person had a different background than Dr. Martin Luther King, he could have enough wisdom to say this person is doing this better than other. That's a biblical principle too. And a lot of people, like are my friends, aren't doing what Gandhi's doing. So he was deeply moved by that, and it influenced his whole approach to social justice. That's why we need to have enough within us to learn and look and learn from the people that are different from us. You know, you have two generations, right? Younger adults and older adults meeting together, a lot of different backgrounds. And what I want is, and what we need in the whole, in healthcare, but in the world, of course, is people able to appreciate others that are different from them, right? It's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and of course, Martin Luther King Jr. is also one of my top favorites. I mean, it's just the kind of acumen and the teachings that they were able to spread was just amazing. But, that's maybe a topic for another podcast.
Sure.
So I also wanted to get into, like, we hear about all these wearables and remote monitoring devices. I mean, health tech is introducing all these different tools. Like, are there specific devices or technology that can redefine, I mean, the preventative care strategies, and especially for the aging population, like anything that comes close to what you've been advocating? Like, are there some, high tech tools, that could help with some of the stuff that you're trying to help with?
Well, I will say this. There's a lot of tech, right? And there's a lot of things that I'm focused on, which that's what I'm going to. Here's the one thing that I would strongly suggest for, we have OpenAI, ChatGPT right now, right? One thing that ChatGPT, well, not even ChatGPT, we just need to have a technology that is valuing and helping to reinforce the value of the stories and the insight and the reflections of an individual. So I think it's really important. They're actually, one thing I'm working on is a reflection tool where it helps reinforce different ideas, suggestions, etc., that we really would reinforce that value that that person has in their own life and the things that matter to them. And it helps to kind of bring those things out, because in our human journey, what we are on a journey of discovering what matters to us, and I haven't yet seen the tech that is helping every individual to do that. As a matter of fact, you hear more of the opposite things that are not productive at all in conversation, and that's it talks about how AI is getting smarter than human beings. That doesn't matter. Like, no human on earth should be here just to be smart, right? Ask my wife. If my one goal should be just to be smart. There's a lot of smart people that have really corrupt goals, right? But they call themselves smart, but their heart is not in the best place, right? So that's because they put values on intellectual skills and ignored social skill and really spiritual skill as well, like where we're connecting meaningfully with one another, and spiritual and art are almost inseparable, like, so when we're talking about art and creativity and growth, those are all abstract terms that are spiritual, but they're also aesthetic. They're art. Education is art. And so being smart is not the goal for AI or of human beings in and of itself. Of course, intelligence is important, but the purpose is to help this technology have the tools and the know-how that it needs to help us be more human and not more industrial and not more technological, if that makes sense. I'd love to go deeper into that, but
So I'm gonna try to unpack this. I think what you're saying is that, why is everybody so afraid of AI that's going to be more intelligent than humans? I guess some of that fear comes from AI taking away a lot of these jobs, and I think it's also AI being capable of improving itself to the point that it can make its own decisions and then be on a destructive path. I mean, I've never quite understood the whole AI Armageddon theory myself, if I'm being honest here, but I think it makes sense. I think, what you're describing is that technology needs to be a tool to just really help us live like better human beings and more human and I think being human comes through connection and relationships.
We all have a story, and it's so fascinating to hear the story that everybody has that story. Everybody has a story, and their story is the is the one thing that they're bringing with them everywhere they go, and it brings context to so many things that are so important, right? The things that really do matter. And I think that, in our society, there's a lot of advances that are happening, which are great. Technological advances are happening, but there has to be, we have to have that connection, right? Social connection is important because, for example, a lot of the founders of social media, they were social network experts, but they perhaps were not at the time social connection experts. So that's why we have these different things going on where for some folks, social media has been not very good for their social well-being, right? And so because social media didn't come with a manual, it didn't say like, "Hey, beware, watch out, don't interact in this type of way because this could not be as good for you," And so, why didn't it do that? Because it didn't. Actually, there's a lot of our world that didn't come with the curriculum, but it should have. Some of it can, but we just didn't have it. I still believe that there's a lot to be introduced to folks before they get on social media. That should happen, because why not? Since we're going to be spending a lot of time on social media, then we need to be aware of how can I use this to benefit what matters to me in my life. Again, it comes back to what matters, and it's not all social media's fault. It's also people have to be engaged and given permission to be engaged, because of the pressures of society say that they shouldn't be paying attention to what matters. We should give them permission to engage in what matters, so that when you interact with other tools, whether it be tech tools or whatever you do in your life, you're always looking at it from the lens of, is this helping me to pursue what matters? Just like you were saying, Arvind, like, are these meetings that I'm having, are they helping me to engage in what matters to me in my life and advance that and advance other people in what matters to them? Because at the end of the day, that's going to help their health and well-being. So when they're an older adult and they look back at their life, they don't have worries, they don't have stress, they don't have as many regrets. They can talk about their life and look back and have a legacy that they can share.
I love it. No, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, I guess my next question is, as we look into 2024, 25, what trends or breakthroughs do you anticipate in your industry that could just really revolutionize the way we approach like human connection or even healthcare, and especially in the context of like social determinants and older adults? Like, what would you say, what are some of the trends and some breakthroughs? And I've got one that fits sort of across the board that I talk about all the time, but I'm very interested in learning more. What your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so I can sum it up in a couple words, and that's multi-layered integration. We need to have multi-layered integration. What I mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, in a lot of industries, we think categorically, especially in healthcare. It's like nurses only talk with nurses, social workers only talk with social workers, physicians only talk to physicians, and then they talk down to the nurses. No, my wife's a nurse, so I just had to put that out there. But not all physicians do that. But we think categorically. we need to think in a different way, and we need to structure our programs, our institutions, our businesses in a way that provides an open platform for people to cross culturally communicate with each other. And I talk a lot and give workshops and all these kind of things on cross cultural communication. But the biggest example that I can give, or at least one of the examples, is telegacy, right? It's interprofessional. You have these folks from different healthcare fields working, talking together, and then meeting with an older adult, right, who is different, but then learning from them and gaining, learning about their story. But they're also getting trained in a way that advocates for diversity, equity, inclusion, so that when they get out in the field, they just so happen to have diversity, equity, inclusion training, social determinants of health training, and then training in different aspects of geriatric education. And so it's multi-layered, right? And it's just integrated. And that can also be integrated within their curriculum so that they can apply those things to the technical skills that they're learning as a med student or as a nursing student, et cetera. That can happen in education, in business, right? Diversity and inclusion doesn't have to be this standalone module that you're looking at as a corporate individual, right? No, it's some. How do we integrate this seamlessly into our culture, into our goals, what we do, and without it being hijacked? I'm not even gonna. We could really go a different place talking about wokeism and all that stuff. But anyway, like it's just from a pure standpoint of how can we integrate this so that we create a space so that everybody feels welcome to have a conversation, right? So that's really, and tech can really help integrate those things seamlessly. A curriculum is something that you don't even see, that you're walking in every day because it's culture. That's what a curriculum basically is. It's a manager of, and it's intentionally implementing a culture that we want. That's what a curriculum is. Intentionally implementing a culture that we want. And
That's a
not
good way to
just,
look at it. Love it.
yeah. And every business needs a curriculum, right?
Yeah. So you're saying that theoretically, a lot of people can figure out what are the right things to do, but in order to implement that across a wider population, technology can help you sort of build that culture by the way of defining it as a curriculum, and that compounding effect could just really help everybody. No, I love that. I mean, of course, I'm not going to claim that I understand all of the nuances of it, but that's why, Jeremy, we definitely got to stay in touch, and I want to follow along your journey and see how everything evolves over the coming years. So lastly, considering that um, it's such a fast-paced nature in our industry, right? In healthcare specifically, like things have really picked up in the last 2 to 3 years. What advice would you give to people who might be hesitant or cautious about embracing sort of this new technology and might be afraid of it, and be like, okay, you know what, this has worked for me for majority of my life. I'm 75 now, like my dad. And why do I need to embrace this new technology, or in their current practice? And I guess, how does that apply to caring for older adults?
Yeah. One thing I would say is that it's caught more than it is taught. And so, for example, we're social human beings. We don't. There needs to be more studies about all the amazing things that you and I, as people, we are able to do, right? One person said it this way. He's like successful businessman, and he said, I just remember, I was playing with toys, and my dad would just be on the phone, doing business calls a lot. And he's like, what he was saying is, I was picking up on that even as a little kid, and it just felt natural to me when I started doing these, million, billion-dollar deals. And so that is something that I think we have to understand. And the reason why I say that is because we've had an older adult try social media for the first time because they entered in a conversation with someone who is objective, right? They're just like, they're meeting for the first time, they become friends. And now when that student said, hey, would you like me to, show you some things with Facebook or whatever? They say, yeah, because they met a friend. It's a safe place for them to grow. And a lot of them, they interacted with their grandchild for the first time on Facebook because of their younger adult student it felt like fun, which learning is supposed to be. And so yeah, that's a great way I think to engage in is first connect with folks that may be a little different from you, but you appreciate each other very much. And then you're going to learn some different things. It might be tech related, or other things like cooking. Like I remember some of the students, like they exchange recipes, because there are some things that were just amazing that the older adult perhaps was able to cook, and there was just this exchange, right? And it naturally happens because we appreciate each other, but there's some differences that are also appreciated we can learn. So I think that's the best way. The best way is socially, we can do it together when we learn.
No, that sounds fantastic. And I think for people who might be hesitant or cautious, I think your message is that just try to be more open to understanding people who may not look like you, who may not have similar backgrounds, and then just embrace it because there's just so many new things that can be learned. But I also liked in your response what you mentioned about, that safe place, because that's what Crucial Conversations talks about, that safety is so important, when you're interacting with somebody. And I mean, I created it's about understanding what their story is and what matters to them and, what gets them going. And I think technology can play an important role, a huge role, and especially AI can just hit it out of the park. I mean, some of the things that you described about, your students taking notes and then you guys sending them, back sort of a summary. I mean, all that can be handled with AI.
That's right.
And it
Yeah.
could be personalized to the extent that we could understand what that older adult might prefer and then tailor it so that there are, based on that narrative that came out from that conversation, there could be those signs, that could just help us make it even better. So I can't wait for the technology to unveil itself over the coming years. And I feel so lucky that Jeremy, you and I are here to experience it and talk about it. And, this was such a fantastic conversation. And I want to applaud you for what you do, not just, you know, at the university and, teaching that future generation, but also, taking care of the older people, that's how a society is judged. How well do we take care of the older people? So thank you for making a difference and thank you for embracing the technology. I really appreciate your time and thank you for coming on the podcast. I'd love to have you back again.
Absolutely, Arvind. It was awesome talking with you, man. This is great. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing, utilizing this technology, this platform for folks to hear about all this. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome, Jeremy. Thank you. Have a great night. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.